Guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Aqua. Today we're going to be reading chapter 5 of the Caesar House, Paranoia. Now, little announcement here. Next week on Thursday, we will have the review for Soul Tide before we start chapter 6 on Friday. That's about it. If you enjoy the chapter, please be sure to drop a like on the video and maybe even consider subscribing. Anyways, enjoy the chapter, everyone. At dinner, Jimmy didn't once look in Sausage's direction. He hadn't done so either yesterday, but at least it wasn't malicious or intentional. Today, it seemed he deliberately tried not to look in Sausage's direction, only ever glancing if he spoke with someone who sat at that half of the table. Sausage didn't comment on it. He didn't need to bring this to the dinner table, not while Catherine so enthusiastically told them about some study she'd read on plant regeneration in a certain species Sausage couldn't remember the name of. He listened as a courtesy and retreated to his room soon after Flip got up as well. Everyone else was still downstairs. Maybe they'd come up as well, but if they talked at a low enough volume, nobody could hear them discuss the sensitive topic that everyone seemed to dance around. Not for much longer. Sausage knocked on Flip's door. After the second knock, the door fell out of the lock and slowly swung open. Flip barely sat behind his desk and frowned, but that frown disappeared when he noticed it was Sausage. He put a friendly smile on his face and looked at his guest. "Hi, Sausage." "Hi," Sausage said. "Can I ask you a private question?" "Sure, come in." Flip stood up as Sausage entered the room. He closed the door behind him, but it fell out of its lock again. Flip pushed against it once more, shutting it. This way of closing the door must be the norm, as Flip acted like it was the most normal thing in the world to push against the door a second time after it fell out of the lock. "Sit down, make yourself comfortable," Flip said, and Sausage sat down on the bed while Flip sat behind his desk. Sausage glanced around the room. It was clean but messy. Some sort of organized chaos where Sausage wouldn't know where to start, and where Flip would know exactly where every little thing lay. He decorated the walls with sheets of paper, all displaying some sort of formulas that were applicable to his math classes. Some other sheets also contained info from other classes, but the formulas far outnumbered the other information. "So," Flip said, leaning back in his chair, "what did you want to ask me?" "What happened to Pixel Riffs?" His face changed instantly. The smile faltered a little, the gaze in his eyes a little more pensive, his relaxed arms tensing a little, with a small inhale, a sensitive topic for everyone in the house. Sausage didn't back down, though staring at Flip and continuing to do so until he responded. "It's a long story," Flip sighed. His tone was less cheerful than it had been a minute ago. His shoulders slouched just a little, and his gaze grew a little more mournful. "Do you have the time?" Sausage asked him. While he'd love to know right away, he understood if it wasn't the right time for Flip to tell him. He knew where he could get the information, though he wouldn't want to wait. If Flip was busy, Sausage figured he could wait. "Not really," Flip said, "but you need to know this. Although, what do you already know?" "His name," Sausage answered truthfully. "Jimmy's got a CD. Whatever happened had to be serious for the school to display his picture." He paused for a moment, debating whether or not to throw out his next thought, and decided to do so. "I'm living in his room, aren't I?" Flip nodded. "Yes." The silence hung heavy between them. Sausage could hear how someone else walked down the hall to their room, past Flip's door. Maybe he waited for the person to go into their room. Maybe he was trying to build the courage to actually talk about the thing that had been left unspoken. Either way, Sausage waited patiently. "Pix disappeared 2 months ago," Flip then said. He leaned forward. His eyes darted around the room, only sometimes landing on Sausage. His hands fidgeted with some sort of figurine he was holding, one he'd grabbed from his jacket's pockets. "It's weird. The whole situation is weird and strangely infuriating. None of us really talk about it. The mood gets It's too strange, and that's no good for anyone. I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. You should have known this before. It's okay. Sausage interrupted him. Now he had a little more information. Pix had disappeared 2 months ago. That was a start. However, he wouldn't get anywhere if Flip rambled about how he should have already known. What happened to him? Why did he disappear? Flip shook his head. I don't know. Nobody knows. Some sort of sad nostalgic smile on his face, caught up in his thoughts. He was the oldest of us. Calm, brilliant, mischievous, always smiled. Always had a plan behind those eyes. He kept the peace around here most of the time. Called his empire Pixandria. He had a lot of books. Has a lot of books. They're in the storage room now. He took a deep breath. Another silence fell, and Sausage knew it would happen a lot. Other than sensitive, this topic seemed to be extremely difficult. Sausage didn't interrupt. He'd let Flip talk as long as he could, so that he could get the raw story as Flip saw it. He could ask questions later. He'd been acting weird. At this point, Flip tried to choose his words carefully, but his attempts failed. He was frowning, too. We don't know what changed, or what happened to him exactly, but he became, I don't know, paranoid? It's hard to describe, but yeah, paranoid covers the load. He started seeing ghosts. Not literally, but he saw things that weren't there. Saw signs where there were none. Danger lurked around every corner, or so he thought. Started speaking less and less, too. At one point, he stopped smiling. It was kind of scary to see him transform so radically within weeks. We tried to help him. His eyes landed on Sausage, though maybe Flip needed to convince himself more than he had to convince his new housemate. We did. We tried. He thanked us for showing our concern, but he didn't think we could help him, which is frustrating. He didn't want our help. He didn't want it, and even tried to drag Jimmy into his delusion. He took another deep breath, now more shaky. He started to tremble a little and tried to keep his voice even, but it sounded like it could break any moment, and Sausage wouldn't know what to do if Flip broke down in tears. Now a real possibility before he finished the story. Jimmy, he's the most gullible of us, and he and Pix were very close, so I suppose it must have been easy. Still, I'm not sure what we would have done if Pix succeeded. Scott intervened, thank goodness, and brought Jimmy back to his senses. He couldn't convince Pix, though. Jimmy couldn't convince him either. Pix had his stupid, illogical opinions, and nobody was changing his mind. No, because what he believed was true, and we were the blind ones. He never said this out loud. I'm pretty sure that's what he thought. Hello, everyone. Editor Aqua here real quick. At this point, it was getting hard for me to record, so I'm sorry if this sounds choppy, but honestly, I was about to cry while I was reading this. So you might want to go and check out this chapter on AO3. I highly suggest pulling it up and following along. It was Thursday when he gulped, swallowed away any tears that dared to form. He wasn't in the best mood, even at school. Jimmy stopped believing in his conspiracy theories, and had told him as much earlier that day. Hadn't come out of his room after school. Didn't want to come down for dinner. Emma went to talk to him, and they shouted. Flip paused, shook his head, eyes on the floor. They shouted. Well, Pix shouted. Emma just tried to calm him down, and had to raise her voice too. It was so strange, so surreal. Pix never yelled. Ever. He never got so angry either. That's just not him. That didn't used to be him. But he's shouting, and I don't remember what they were shouting about. The voices blend together. But there's one line, one sentence that... He put the figurine on the desk and covered his mouth with one hand, closing his eyes, bowing his head, trembling a little more. His breathing was sharp and ragged. Sausage looked away, allowing him a moment of vulnerability before he chose to continue telling his story, if He chose to continue telling the story. I heard him say one thing, if I understood it correctly, loud and clear, Flip said after a while. He said, I won't let you kill me. Sausage's heart dropped. He missed the context, so he couldn't be sure about the exact circumstances, but it had been said in the exact circumstances it had been said in. Even then, Emma was a nice woman, a good housekeeper. Sausage could see her support Pix through these changes and quietly trying to dissuade him from believing his conspiracy theories. To then turn around and tell her that he wouldn't let her kill him felt outrageous, undeserving. Where had that thought come from? If I've heard that, Flip continued with an even shakier breath, then the others must have heard it too. Nobody said a word downstairs. We were just dumbfounded. Nobody ate that evening, but Pix, he continued to shout and stormed downstairs, ran outside. Jimmy wanted to go after him, but Emma told him to stay. Pix needed some time alone to let off some steam. She believed he'd come back to apologize in due time. That's what we all believed. He never liked conflict. He'd be back to talk it out. It was one of the strangest evenings of our lives. None of us slept well. Flip shook his head. We thought he'd come back. He always comes back. It's Pix. He doesn't stay away. He doesn't just leave either. He'd be back. We were so sure of it. But the next morning, a Friday, nobody saw him prepare for school. Nobody had heard him come back. He wasn't in his room either, and he just hadn't come back. He took a sharp breath. He didn't come back. He's not the kind of person to stay away too long, to leave a conflict unresolved. We filed a report with the police. They call him a runaway, which he did run away, but he didn't. I can't imagine he wanted to. He wouldn't run away. Yes, he'd changed, but he still wouldn't run away. The worst part is not knowing. Not knowing if what he was doing, what he was exposing himself to, what he read or saw or heard that twisted his mind beyond recognition and changed him so drastically. He brought a hand back up to his mouth. It hurt us all. We never wanted this to happen. We were trying to help. Jimmy, he's most upset, which he blames himself for Pix running away. For him being in such a bad mood that he ran away. He never gave up hope that he'd return. He's still hoping. He even salvaged that disc you mentioned. Pix had given it to him as a joke. Listens to it unironically now. He shook his head and turned directly to Sausage. You haven't heard him blast it yet, but you will soon enough. He can't go a couple of days without damaging his ears with that noise. Flip tried to chuckle, to keep the mood in a situation where that was virtually impossible. He failed, and the half-hearted smile disappeared from his face. And he remained silent. Sausage listened without interruption, trying to absorb all of the information presented to him. He would like to believe he had a good idea of who Pixelriffs used to be before he ran away, but that wasn't the case. His image of Pixelriffs was already tainted by the last few weeks that Flip had described, where he'd changed and had gone insane. It overshadowed who he was, and if he really wanted to know Pixelriffs, he should ask Jimmy what he was like. But not right away. He was still emotional about what happened earlier today, and Sausage wanted to wait before approaching Jimmy and making amends. I'm sorry, Sausage said. Sorry that they lost a friend. Sorry that said friend lost his mind. Sorry that Sausage took his place, making it look like Emma had lost hope of ever finding him. She didn't mention Pixelriffs either, but Sausage believed that she missed him too. She must be. It's okay. You didn't know, Flip said. At least now you know. Oh, but those last words... I honestly hope I misheard it. I hope I misremember it. I hope that's what my mind made of it, because if that is what he actually said... His voice trailed off. Couldn't finish the sentence. Stared at the wall again. Thank you for sharing this with me, Sausage said. He tried to sound even more genuine than he already was. Flip deserved to know that Sausage truly appreciated him sharing the story, even though it was painful. You should have known already, but you're welcome, Flip said. Could you please, we don't really talk about it. For Jimmy's sake, he sighed. For everyone's sake, really. It's a painful topic. I won't mention his name out loud if you tell them that I now know, Sausage said. He thought it better that they heard it from him than if they heard it from Sausage. Comfort and familiarity. Flip nodded. Will do. Sausage stood up. He's already taken up some of Flip's time, and he had gotten what he came here for. The whole situation made him awkward. He wanted to provide some comfort, but he had no idea where to start, and what Flip would be okay with. Instead, the best thing he thought to do was to leave him in peace, so he could decide for himself what to do. Good evening, Flip, Sausage said. Thanks again. You're welcome. Good evening. Sausage closed the door, then closed it again as it fell out of the lock. 2 seemed to be the magic number with this door. He returned to his own room and lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Someone else used to stare at this ceiling. Someone who lost his mind and ran away. Or maybe he didn't. Flip truly believed that Pixelriffs would have come back eventually. But it has been 2 months since his disappearance. 2 months, and he hadn't returned yet. The evidence was stacked in the favor of the theory that he did run away and was hiding out somewhere. And though Sausage was inclined to believe that he'd gone insane, he wanted to keep an open mind about it. Every story has multiple sides. So did this one. Everyone involved had a different view of what happened. Flip watched it as an outsider. Jimmy was involved at one point, but Scott pulled him out. Scott, having been the one to save Jimmy, had a different view than Flip. Then there was Emma, who'd been yelled at, and Pixelriffs himself, who probably had the best idea of what was going on, but who wasn't around to tell his side of this tale. Pixelriffs, who once must have stared at the very same ceiling Sausage stared at, and who wondered about what to do next. I'll take care of them, Sausage said to nobody in particular. Maybe to the ghost of a boy who ran away, still clinging to every item and person in the house. He'd take care of the room, of the people in the house. He couldn't take away their pain, and didn't want to fill the void that his absence left, but he could try to be a new friend. He could try to help them through the grief, and maybe they could help him with his own grief. He could start by doing his job. Sausage hadn't referred to it as his job yet. It had always been his parents, or Sir Carlos. That chicken had been around for forever, seeing to it that the family stayed on the right path. And one day, when he turned 18, Sausage would be initiated, and all the secrets would be revealed to him, so that he may pass them on to his children. He didn't know much, just the wisdom that his parents and Sir Carlos had taught him, and their general purpose. Everything would be leading up to his 18th birthday. But his home went up in flames, and his parents and Sir Carlos perished. And Sausage couldn't salvage any of the top secret, important documents they had in their possession. It was the only instance Sausage had wished he hadn't been disciplined all the time, and had glimpsed at these documents before they were consumed by the flames. A fire during the day, when Sausage was at school. His parents and Sir Carlos were never that careless. It had been the enemy. But he wouldn't know who or what that was exactly. And maybe he never would. Or maybe he'd find out through other means. For now, the best action he could take was to record these wisdoms and general purpose in what should be the start of a new archive. For him and his family, to defend the world from evil in whatever form it would present itself. To help and protect his housemates from the same evil, because they never chose to cross paths with him, or put themselves in the crossfire between him and the enemy that took everything from him. This was more productive than moping anyway. He grabbed an empty notebook and sat at his desk with a black pen. He wrote the first words of this new archive, the name of this work and movement, one of the few things he'd learned before the fire. Ordo Gallinae.